Israel presents itself as the only democracy in the Middle East, yet its education system, policies, and treatment of Palestinians reveal characteristics that align with Orwellian control. From the systematic rewriting of history to the compulsory teaching of nationalist ideology, Israel constructs a reality that justifies its existence and policies while suppressing dissenting narratives. This essay will examine how the Israeli curriculum distorts history, how surveillance and propaganda serve the Zionist project, and how language manipulation dehumanizes Palestinians, reinforcing an apartheid-like structure under the guise of democracy. The Israeli education system and historical manipulation. Education is one of the most powerful tools for shaping collective identity and national consciousness. In Israel, history is not simply taught, but engineered to fit a nationalist framework that justifies the existence of a Jewish state while erasing or distorting inconvenient truths. The Israeli curriculum presents the idea that modern Israel is a direct continuation of the ancient Jewish kingdoms of 3,000 years ago, reinforcing the belief that Jews have an exclusive and eternal right to the land. However, this claim ignores the broader historical context. Even the ancient Jewish kingdoms were established through conquest and colonization, much like many other civilizations in history. The indigenous people of the Levant, Canaanites, Phoenicians, and other Semitic groups, existed long before these kingdoms emerged. If one were to follow Israel's logic, then the land should rightfully belong to the descendants of those even earlier civilizations, not just to Jewish settlers. Furthermore, the education system systematically omits or distorts key historical events. The Nakba, or catastrophe, in which over 700,000 Palestinians were forcibly expelled in 1948, is either downplayed or outright denied. Instead, Israeli students are taught that Palestinians fled voluntarily or were ordered to leave by Arab leaders, despite extensive historical evidence proving otherwise. This erasure of Palestinian suffering ensures that young Israelis grow up with a one-sided view of history, one that fuels nationalist sentiment while dehumanizing the indigenous people of the land. The Zionist project, which presents itself as a return to an ancestral homeland, is in reality a colonial movement facilitated by European powers. This is explicitly admitted in The Iron Wall, an essay by Ze'ev Jabotinsky, one of the ideological forefathers of Zionism. In this essay, Jabotinsky acknowledges that Zionism is a colonial endeavor and that Palestinians will never accept their displacement. His solution? To build an iron wall of military force until the indigenous population is subjugated. This strategy remains the foundation of Israeli policy today, where military dominance and surveillance ensure Palestinian subjugation under a system resembling apartheid. Beyond history, the Israeli education system enforces a compulsory study of the Talmud, a central text of rabbinic Judaism. While religious education is common in many nations, in Israel, this is not simply about faith. It is about reinforcing a nationalist, ethnocentric worldview. Some interpretations of the Talmud promote Jewish supremacy, with passages describing non-Jews in ways that can be construed as dehumanizing. By mandating religious education with a nationalist slant, the Israeli state ensures that future generations internalize a sense of Jewish exceptionalism, further entrenching the divide between Jews and Palestinians. This indoctrination is not limited to schools. The Israeli military, which requires mandatory service for most Jewish citizens, serves as an extension of this ideological framework. Soldiers are taught that they are defending not just a state, but a divine right to the land. This religious nationalist fusion justifies violent policies, from settlement expansion to military raids, all under the pretext of self-defense and divine entitlement, surveillance and control, a digital panopticon. Israel's democratic facade masks a deeply Orwellian surveillance state, particularly when it comes to Palestinians. The Israeli government employs extensive surveillance measures to monitor, control, and suppress Palestinian life. Facial recognition technology, predictive policing, and extensive digital surveillance ensure that Palestinians are constantly watched, with their movements restricted through military checkpoints and biometric databases. This level of control mirrors the dystopian reality of Orwell's 1984, where an omnipresent government watches and dictates the lives of its subjects. Moreover, Israel's policies extend beyond physical surveillance. The manipulation of language is another tool used to dehumanize Palestinians. Israeli officials and media often refer to Palestinians simply as Arabs, a deliberate tactic that erases their distinct national identity. By reducing Palestinians to a generic Arab identity, the state fosters the narrative that they are merely part of a broader, undifferentiated mass of people who could theoretically live in any Arab country, thus undermining their claim to Palestine as their homeland. This linguistic manipulation serves a dual purpose. It denies Palestinians their identity while reinforcing the idea that Israel is the only true national homeland within its borders. This is a textbook example of Orwellian doublespeak, where language is twisted to shape reality and control perception. The myth of Israel's right to exist. A core argument in Israel's defense is that it has a right to exist, a phrase often wielded as an emotional shield against criticism. However, no state inherently has a right to exist. Throughout history, borders and nations have constantly shifted. Empires have risen and fallen. The idea that Israel alone is exempt from this historical reality is a fabrication designed to silence opposition. Israel was established through force, backed by British colonial power, and later maintained through military dominance. Its continued existence, like any state's, depends on its ability to sustain itself politically and militarily, not on an abstract moral right. The insistence that Israel has an unquestionable right to exist while ignoring the right of Palestinians to self-determination exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of Zionist rhetoric. Apartheid disguised as democracy. Despite branding itself as the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel systematically disenfranchises millions of Palestinians. Those living under occupation in the West Bank and Gaza have no political rights in the state that controls their lives. Meanwhile, Palestinian citizens of Israel face systemic discrimination in housing, employment, and legal rights. Israel's nation-state law explicitly states that only Jews have the right to national self-determination in Israel, cementing an apartheid-like structure where Jewish supremacy is enshrined in law. This legal framework, combined with military occupation, surveillance, and the deliberate erasure of Palestinian history, ensures that Israel functions as an ethnostate rather than a true democracy. In conclusion, Israel's education system, surveillance apparatus, and ideological framework construct a reality that aligns with Orwellian principles of historical manipulation, thought control, and linguistic distortion. By rewriting history, enforcing nationalist religious education, and employing extensive surveillance, Israel ensures that its population remains aligned with the Zionist project while dehumanizing and oppressing Palestinians. The Israeli state's claim to democracy is hollow when examined through the lens of its policies. Instead of a beacon of liberal values, it operates as an apartheid state that justifies its existence through propaganda, historical revisionism, and Orwellian control. Recognizing these realities is essential to challenging the dominant narratives and advocating for a future based on justice, equality, and historical truth.